Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games, and I'm here with another Elder Scrolls Legends video. And today I want to talk about the impending buffs slash nerfs that are coming to two cards, one of which has actually already happened. So let's start with the Soul Rest Marshal. For many, this is the bane of this game. Soul Rest Marshal says if you have more health than your opponent, the next card you play this turn costs 6 less. So essentially, you so far have been able to play a Soul Marshal on turn 5 or even 4 with Magic Elixir, and then play out something like a Jarl and draw 2 cards. And so on turn 4, you get 2 4/4s and 2 cards, and that was pretty much backbreaking in a lot of matchups. So this was noticed, and now the Marshal actually has a slight nerf. It says what it actually happens is it's cost 5 less now. So it's making it a little bit harder to combo into something like Jarl or a number of the other bigger drops. It's actually going to take you one more turn. So this has been sort of stealth nerfed, but it's been announced that this was intended, and this will be a change that will happen in the next 48 hours or so. Alright, but perhaps more importantly than that, Soul Rest Marshal was very limited before. It says next card, but the way he had been playing was just character. But now he got sort of a buff. Like, whenever bugs are fixed, they're actually buffs if they help him. So he was buffed to now include any card. So this means you can do all kinds of cool stuff. On turn 5, you could go something like Soul Rest Marshal into Divine Fervor. You could play him into a Javelin, a Piercing Javelin, and go ahead and just crush a guy. I did this yesterday. Someone put out a dude, put a couple weapons on him. I went, okay, Marshal Javelin, ball game. So you can do some really strong combos now with Soul Rest Marshal. So it's going to be really interesting moving forward. What kind of combinations are we able to put together with Soul Rest Marshal? Is this buff going to be too much? I'm really interested in playing him in a deck where I can do something like Thieves' Den and Divine Fervor, and so then on that turn 5 or turn 4, if I'm going second, I most likely get to combo out one of these awesome supports, which normally is a huge tempo loss, but instead of taking the tempo loss, I just get it out with Marshal, and boom, I'm on my way. Alright, so that's the first buff slash nerf to the Soul Rest Marshal. There was a really big, huge nerf that's happening as well, though, and that is to the Murkwater Savage. The Murkwater Savage has been sort of the prime card, the prime early drop in basically every green deck. You play a Savage turn 2, and if he's not immediately handled, he gets out of control. Turn 3, you could put out 2 cards, make him a 4/4. By turn 4, maybe the dude is like a 6/6. Especially if you get him out turn 1, he can be incredibly difficult to remove. You get to protect him with the Thieves Guild fighter who has lethal, and he's just a really impossible card to deal with. And one of the biggest problems is his presence made it easier to get ahead on life to be able to trigger the Soul Rest Marshal. And so those 2 cards in combination especially were a huge problem. Guess what? He's getting nerfed. He now is going to cost 3 in just a day or so. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how much will that change green as a whole. How much will it change the Archer deck that's been really prominent since I've been playing the game, since it went into open beta. So it'll be very interesting to see, without the Savage as a great 2-drop, what's going to happen. Will he even see play? That's also going to be really interesting. Will he see play as a 3-drop, or will people just say, well, he's not worth it, I'm going to go ahead and put in something like the Daring Cut Purse, who is also a 2-drop. He can kind of get out of control if things work out just right. Not nearly as good as the Savage, of course. So it'll be interesting. Do they just cut this 2-drop? Do they replace it with someone else? Another potential 2-drop is the Dunestalker. The Dunestalker is really interesting, especially if you're trying to trigger the Soul Rest Marshal. Having a card that can move somebody to another lane so it doesn't die, so it can push that immediate damage. It could be an interesting replacement for the Savage. What's going to be really difficult is what would the Savage replace at the 3-hole? You're not replacing the Kinsman. The Kinsman is just absolutely critical to pretty much any green deck, and especially the Archer deck where it wants to get ahead on life. He just makes it impossible. Once he hits the board, you give up and you say, all right, do your Soul Rest Marshal combo nonsense. There's nothing I can do about that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how these buffs, nerfs, really affect the metagame, and we'll have to see how it shakes out. My guess is there's going to be some really interesting stuff to come out of the Soul Rest Marshal buff. Buff meaning that you can now play non-creature cards with him. And then it'll be interesting to see how that affects something like Archer that really likes to run that Soul Rest Marshal into Jarl combo on turn 5. Now that combo gets moved to turn 6, giving your opponent that one more window, that one more last gasp to try to knock you down to less health than them. And so it's going to be really interesting. Will this change make aggro decks more popular? Will it make token decks more popular? Will it make like hardcore aggro decks more popular, so they have that one more turn to get you down and then keep you down? And if they can get there, and now your hand is, Soul Rest Marshal, Jarl, and some other stuff, that hand looks a lot worse than if you could go turn 5 or turn 6, Soul Rest Marshal into Jarl, 2 more cards. Yes, let's do this thing. So it'll be very interesting to see moving forward how this affects the metagame. I don't have a great prediction now, other than I really think we'll see some interesting things. I especially think we're going to see Monk crop up, and I think we'll see some really cool Monk decks come out of this. Because like I said, there's some interesting things that you could play off of that. You can play Imperial Might, you can play Javelin, you can play Divine Fervor, so we'll have to see how that works. Another quick secret idea I had was to go with green-blue, and then you could play Winter's Grasp off of him as well, which might make it a little easier to combo into some sort of Hex Mage finisher situation. I'm not entirely sure how that would work out. It's just an interesting idea I've got clicking around in my brain that I'll have to experiment with. So good luck, get ready for the nerfs, and I'll see you next time on Tiny Grimes Games.